Hey everybody, Pastor Vern for January 6, 2020. No, wrong. 2021. Sorry, I'm still falling into that old pattern. Kind of got used to that. It takes a little while to get shifted into gears. All right, so we are in 2021, and this is the first Wednesday in January. And we're talking about the disciples, the men who followed Jesus closely, who was part of his inner circle. And yesterday we talked about Nathanael, who was kind of a doubter that was brought to Christ, and Christ addressed him in a way that took away his doubts. But we know that Philip introduced Nathanael to Jesus, and so we're going to talk about Philip today. Maybe I'm doing this backwards, but I do a lot of things backwards, I guess. But anyway, we're going to talk about Philip today. Philip is from the Gospel of John. Once again, we don't really see too much of him anyplace else. And the Gospel of John, once again, I think is more, a better narrative of the day-to-day things of Jesus' life than maybe the other Gospels are. And Philip, he has a little larger role than some of the disciples have. Even though he doesn't really appear much in the first three Gospels. He was a follower of Christ, and he wasted no time in calling others. He was evangelistic that way. He went right to Nathanael after he found out or realized that Jesus was the Messiah, or took that into his heart. He also is the first man who heard Jesus say the words, "Follow me." So he was the first of the disciples who was called in that way. We talked about him talking to Nathanael. That was one of the first times we see him. We see him again at the feeding of the 5,000. Yeah, Philip is one of those guys that get a little bit of a bad rap because he seems to be kind of negative a lot of the time, or either that or lacking understanding. But I think Philip was someone whose heart was really in a powerful place. To be a part of Jesus's inner circle. We see him in the feeding of the 5,000 where he says, Christ, where are we going to get food for all these people? And Jesus kind of tells him, it'll be sufficient. Let him worry about that. Next time we see Philip in Jesus' life, in the last days of Jesus' life, when we're into the time of the Passion, He shows up there for a little bit. And the last time we see Philip is maybe one of the most famous times, or at least a time that I'm most familiar with, from the 14th chapter of John, and when Jesus is in the upper room and he's talking to his disciples about the future without him, I guess you would say, without him in the flesh, I should say. And both Thomas and Philip asked Jesus some questions about, what does this all mean? And he asks Jesus when he had seen the Father, because Jesus says, "You have seen the Father." And Jesus says, kind of says that you've been with me all this time and you did not see that I am that you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So he gets a little bit of a bad rap for some of the questions he asked, even though, what we find so many times in history is that the folks that ask those questions are oftentimes the same people who, or one of those people who just ask the questions for the group. Everyone's thinking it, but they're the ones that ask it. So that's a little bit about Philip. I guess probably his doubt about feeding the 5,000, his wondering where he'd seen the Father, has made it has given him a little bit of a bad rap in the Scriptures. But one thing we ought to lift up about Philip before we go is that even though we don't see a whole lot of him, we don't see him particularly in the Scriptures afterwards. The historical record would tell us that he went to preach in Asia Minor, that he died a martyr in that part of the world, and it was really Philip's desire and his search for truth that led him directly to the promised Messiah. Could we ask for anything more, any of us, that our search for truth and light would lead us directly to the Messiah? All right. Well, you guys take good care of yourselves. Watch out for others best you can. We'll talk to you later. Bye.